Hello everybody. First I want to apologize for not being so active on my channel for a good 2 months now. I've been actually pretty busy in the garage as well, but as well as at my work. I just did not have a good case studies, pretty much a lot of wrenching, a lot of brake jobs, axles, brakes, rotors pretty much every day. Nothing really worth filming it, so nothing, couple misfires again, ignition related, and I'm pretty sure everybody's tired of secondary ignition waveforms analysis. So really not much that I could film. I'm hoping that something's going to come up soon. In the meantime, I picked up another hobby, and right now is for you guys who follow me on my channel. You guys know that back in the spring of this year we purchased a boat that was involved in electrical fire, and we were able to fix that boat out pretty good, and we decided to sell it. And then we purchased another boat, another project, and this one was much bigger project. It was a complete rebuild from the floor and upholstery and everything. The engine was, the boat was just sitting for a long time. Engine wise, it was not running right. I had to rebuild the carburetor, which I never did it before. Timing was out, whatever. So anyhow, it was a lot of work. But anyhow, the engine is fixed, and right now actually I'm finishing my last seat. And later on, probably in another video, I'll show you guys the final product. Now I'm in the process of finishing my last piece of a puzzle, which is a second captain chair, which kind of makes me sad. I really enjoy doing the upholstery on this boat. This is my machine here. This is actually probably like the fifth or sixth one I went through since the summer. I struggled a lot to find a good upholstery machine. They're pretty high, they're pretty expensive, and finally got one that's what's it called, a fully walking foot with reverse. Pretty much every option that I needed it for a good upholstery job. And right now, actually I picked this one up for 150 bucks. It was crazy cheap actually, and on a Facebook marketplace. So anyhow, right now, as I said, I'm in the process of fixing my last piece of a puzzle, and right now I'm actually sewing my piping. It's called piping here on this long piece of material that's going to be kind of like a headrest for the chair. I did a boat, and as I was, of course, the beginning was very stressful. I wasted a lot of material, and not having a great machine, sewing machine, that was a big struggle with any job. When you, if you don't have the right tool, you're not gonna get a. It's gonna be difficult, and you're not gonna have good results no matter what you do. But now I'm actually pretty happy with this one. These are old industrial sewing machines. They are designed to do like some crazy 3,000 to 5,000 stitches a minute, and you have to slow them down. You can see this, I have a very slow speed on this machine now. I put the pulley system on it, and you really want to have a slow machine that you can actually have a control over it. And this is a special presser foot, which I could not find. There was another struggle to find actually the parts for the machine. I finally found the presser foot. That has some like a indentation on it. It actually slides over the ridge of this piping now. And you can see this is just a piece of vinyl. I cannot pronounce that, vinyl or vinyl, whatever. So you basically suture this piece to this long piece, and then we're gonna suture the rest of the puzzle together. And so I'm pretty much at the end of this side, and now we're going to do the same on another side. And I know it's kind of completely different for what I do on my channel, but since I got nothing else to film, I think it's kind of it might be interesting just to see that upholstery. It's not terribly difficult. There's plenty of YouTube videos how to do it, and doing the chair is something that you don't want to start doing right on. You want to do some easier things, of course, like a simple seats and stuff like that, until you really kind of get your get comfortable with the sewing machine. I have never touched a sewing machine in my life. This is the I started this summer, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and now it's actually I'm okay with it. I'm not a not professional by any means, but it's actually getting now more fun that I can actually enjoy what I'm doing. So this is a kind of fancy machine right now. I actually have I can control my my presser foot. I don't have to flip it here. It's actually, I have it down to control on my knee. I can actually lift the foot, and I can move my material whichever way I wanted it. This is a beautiful machine. It's a made in Japan. It's Rex company. It's 11-155R. I think R stands for reverse, I would say. And absolutely beautiful piece of machinery. And working on cars, it's kind of it's just so fascinating how everything has to be synced in, how everything has to function. These machines, sometimes you take the stuff for granted. You just do what you do, but everything that's involved in this machine is amazing. How everything has to be synced together, and a lot of times this being an old machines, and they would sit for a long time. They had to be oiled. They had to be cleaned up, and they had to be tuned and timed correctly. This meaning actually when the needle goes down, there's a like a little cylinder that spins around that actually catches the bottom thread, and all that has to be precisely timed in, and if it's not going to work. So actually I was able to learn all that. Now here is your tension spring. You have to set that up as well. So anyhow, right now I'm actually pretty pleased with this machine. It works great. And this guy actually found this machine in a basement of some house that he was doing a remodeling, and picked it up for nothing. And he was sitting in behind his house. Luckily it was covered, but it started to get some rust on it. Anyhow, I was able to clean everything up, oil everything, and it's just amazing. Works perfect. I also have here on this knob, I can actually set my stitch length. This is just straight stitch machine. It's not a zigzag. Most of the industrial machines are made just for one task and one task only, and they are made, as I said before, to do things really fast. For like miles and miles of material actually flies to these machines on every shift. So now, in order to modify this machine for upholstery, you got to slow the speed down, and this machine actually has a big motor under the table, and it's like a clutch motor. Basically, you turn the machine on, you turn the motor on, and you have a pedal that will mechanically actually pretty much it's what it is. It's a clutch. With your pedal, you're gonna press the clutch together, and it's gonna start spinning actually it's gonna move your belt, and it's gonna move the machine. Anyhow, let me show you what I'm doing now. So here's the chair that I'm doing. I already done one, and it went okay, but I'm changing my technique a little bit, trying to make it a little bit more easier. And you can see this one's actually not as bad shape as the first one. Inside of this chair you got a bolsters, and that's what kind of makes it a little more difficult for me. And I'll show you everything that's inside of the chair. All these pieces actually all these are separate pieces. They actually fit into the chair itself, and this is what they look like. And I'm pretty pleased the way these went. The one that I did before, it was okay, but as I said, I kind of changed my technique, how I measure everything. It looks much better. Now you can see that you've got a piping all the way around, and in the back you just staple it with your staple gun. I have just a pneumatic one from Harbor Freight. This works great. And so I'll show you how this, I'm still struggling. I'm kind of bunched up in the back. I need to get better with how I actually staple everything, but it works okay. So this has got, everything's going to fit together, all these pieces. Now the main challenge, like you can see, these are actually angled a little bit this way, the angle this way and angle this way as well. So you can't just cut a straight piece of material and sew it together and anything is going to work. It's not. It's a little bit more difficult than that, but I was able to figure out. Again, this is the second one, so it's a little bit easier. So now all these pieces are going to go like this. So this is a front piece, fits in here, and then it has this like a lid that's going to wrap around and be stapled underneath the seat. And here's the headrest. This was hard to make, and this is going to be stitched to the back. This end is going to be stitched to the back of the chair, right here, and it's going to be like this. Let's see which way. So, yeah, it's going to be actually this way. And this part is going to be stapled to the chair, and then this bolster is going to cover up. It's going to look like something like this. Of course, it's still going to have to be tightened down and everything. So this is what it's going to look like once you're done. So right now, I'm in the process of making actually this piece all the way around, and this is what I have here. You can see there's piping on both sides of this strip, and I marked my center here. Mistake that I made on the last chair was that, and I didn't know that this material actually stretches in one direction, and that's the mistake that I made on the last chair. I was not aware of that. So what happened? The guy who got my last machine, I sold actually 3 machines already. As I said, I've been buying and selling them throughout the summer, trying to find the one that I really need. And the guy who bought my last machine, that was actually FAF. It was a pretty good one, but didn't have all the features, didn't have reverse. And that was the reason you want to have reverse in a machine that can actually, I didn't have a clue about any of that stuff. You want to actually lock your stitch. You want to, you do a couple of stitches and then you go reverse to lock your stitch so that your stitch doesn't come undone. If you don't have that option, then you're going to run into some problems later on. Now, this machine has the reverse feature, and it's a blessing to work with. It's so much easier. So anyhow, when I sold the last machine, the guy actually, he was a professional who has an upholstery shop for many years, had an upholstery shop, and he told me what happened actually as I was putting everything together, it started stretching. Right here actually stretches way too much. Luckily it's symmetrical on both sides and it's not that noticeable. It's okay, but it could be much better. So he told me to pay attention when I do this one. And as you can see here, now this material can kind of stretch it like now this way, but you cannot stretch it this way. So what you have to do, and I asked him, I say, how do you know which way it stretches? So you just pick up your material and you grab it and you pull it and you'll see which way it will stretch. Now, again, that's important, especially, it's not a big deal most of the time, but for this particular case it is, because you don't want this part of your chair, of your material to stretch too much. And when you're cutting when you take a roll of your material, you want to figure out on what side of the roll you're going to make your cut. You're going to cut your strips out. So this time I am actually on the good side. You can see it's not stretching. So this is going to lay like this, all the way around. And now I have now this little bit tricky part here, as you can see, is pretty much the same dimensions all the way around until it gets to the end of the chair, and it gets a little bit wider here. And now I marked my spot where actually what I'm going to do now, I'm going to cut the whole strip. It's like I actually do now using the centimeters, it's kind of more precise for me, and it's going to be 5.5 centimeters all the way until I get to this point, and I'm just going to kind of cut a little bit wider and finish my piping on another side. And again, I apologize for you guys who, I know this is completely different, but something that I really start enjoying doing it, and it's a very rewarding job. I mean, again, it's not it's not impossible to learn how to do all this. Now, I mean, I struggle to do my measurements until, you know, for every job you got to have a tools. And then I bought this, you know, this just cheap tape, but you can actually measure. But it's so important because of course it's tape, so you can actually wrap it around your material and measure what do you need and how much you need, instead of having the metal one. It just doesn't work right. And now I struggle a lot to get my to mark my what's it called, Seam Allowance. You know, now I'm using a 1.5 centimeters on each side. So if I measure 5.5, I'm gonna add 3 centimeters extra to my material, so I can have a centimeter and a half on each side to stitch my piping line. And actually I'm using this thing, and I had this in the drawer forever, and this works great because not only I can measure it much more precise, but I can actually use these tips. I can actually stab it, and I don't even have to use a pencil now. I can just stab this around and mark my spots and just go, you know, go with a straight line and mark my piece. And so anyhow, my next step is going to be to cut all this to a 5.5 centimeters and leave a centimeter. Basically, it's going to be 7 centimeters now piece of the material. And once I get to this point, I'm just going to widen it up and finish it. So, and then from there, we're going to have the more challenging part, where we're going to get these side pieces and of course the back piece here. The back piece, it's not hard, it's just a square. I'm just going to measure it. What I did the first time, I actually unstitched everything and laid all these pieces to the table, and you get lost in a minute because then you have no idea what's what. When you see everything together, everything is easy, but once you lay it down on the floor, you basically go from 2-dimensional picture to 3-dimensional picture, and then you have to stitch it together. You have to follow all these curves on your material to basically make what needs to look like a chair, right? And so anyhow, I'm going to finish the cutting here, and then we're going to measure these. Now, I was lucky the first time because once I got everything apart, I had a chair that I could actually. I had this chair still together. I went to this chair. I took a whole bunch of pictures, but still it wasn't enough. So I looked this chair and I said, okay, well this goes here, this goes there. And now I'm actually using little bit different system. I'm going to keep everything intact, and I'm just going to use a clear plastic that I'm going to lay onto my side, and then mark my stitch line, and use that as a template to cut my pieces on both sides, left, inside and outside. All right. So what I like to do, if I have a long piece to cut like this, I like to put it on the edge of the table. The problem with the material, you know, the fabric, it's not a board. You know, these things are moving, and they're sometimes hard to mark. So what I like to do, I put a couple of clamps on my table, lay it down on the edge of, make it flush with the edge of my table. You can see it's kind of still moving a little bit, but it's fine. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to, since between these two stitch lines, it's a 5.5 centimeters. So now this is going to be my stitch line here, and I'm going to add another 1.5 centimeters. That's going to give me a 7 centimeters. So from this stitch line here, I'm going to mark 7 centimeters, and then I'm going to cut this end off. So now with this one, actually, I can, instead of doing all these little marks, I can actually just kind of go in here, and I'm at the 70 centimeters on my tool, and I can just go here and I stab it a little bit, and it leaves the mark. Kind of speed up the process. Instead of using a pencil to keep marking your spot over and over again, this actually works very well. Now, I wish this is a cheap one. I wish I can actually lock it in so it doesn't move, but it works okay. And so let's go again, mark my spots, and then we're gonna cut this end off, and then we're gonna use now for my piping. I'm using a strip of 4 centimeters, and once I fold it in half, and then my stitch line is going to be right at the 1.5 centimeters actually. That's why I'm adding that seam allowance of 1.5 centimeters. And I don't have to worry about looking at, well, I just have to look at the edge of my material, and I know exactly where I need to make my stitch line. It really makes sense, but you can actually use a ink pen, it's fine. Usually I do not mark on top of the material. I like to use the back side, but this will be okay because it's going to be covered. It's not a big deal. So this is a really struggle a lot to keep this straight, and I'm trying to get as much tension as I can so it doesn't move as much. And something else I've learned is that now this boat was a complete disaster. It was in a really bad shape. Everything was rotten on it, from the floor, from all of the sides, and everything was just rotten. So along with all the upholstery I pretty much had to rebuild the whole interior of the boat. All the furniture basically had to be made up and everything. So it was a big job, and I actually took 7 days vacation. I spent 7 days of my vacation working on a boat, like in July, and turned out pretty good for the first time. I'm pretty pleased the way it went. And when we went to buy the boat, Nick and we went there, and of course Nick is a teenager, and he told me, "Daddy, just walk away, it's not worth it, this is terrible shape." It's not, actually I did overpay more. Back in the summer the boats are pretty expensive, so I actually paid quite a bit more than I should for the condition of the boat, but it has good engine, good outdrive and everything. So I did check the compression at the time when I got a boat. Actually I used my picoscope and I did quick compression, and with my scope and everything was fine, so I knew, well, at least that's going to be okay. Now I checked the floor and it looks solid, and I learned a valuable lesson. If everything around the boat, inside the boat, is rotten, the floor is not in a good shape either. So I end up replacing a half of the floor inside. It was a big job, but it was fun. I mean, something I've never done before, and it was very rewarding. So and something else also, I had to prove to my son that he was actually wrong. So I had to work my ass off to get it fixed up nicely. And he did admit later on, he was like, "Daddy, I didn't have a clue that you could do this." But anyhow, I had to prove him that he was wrong, even though he was pretty much right. He was in a bad shape. I have some pictures, and I'm probably going to make another video and show you guys what the boat looks like and what it looked before and after. But in this video I'm just going to show you what I'm actually doing right now, and again, it's really fun. I mean, it's a super fun project, and I'm kind of getting a little sad because this is coming to an end, and now I'm kind of looking for another boat to work on, and it's alright, so it's gonna do that side, and so we're gonna do piping, and then we're gonna start working on. We're gonna just do this, and it'll be okay. Well, I just want to show you guys, if you ever think about doing this, it's not rocket science. I mean, it is stressful when I figure out that I really suck at geometry, because every time I would take two pieces, I would not lay them the way they're supposed to be. They would hung up and down, and I stitch it together, and then you realize you made a mistake, or the machine wouldn't work right. You said, it was always something going on. But overall, it was a good experience. So I'm going to finish this side, and then we're going to get the other stuff going. My strips cut for my piping gun for this side, and as you can see now, we have this part of the strip is a little bit wider. That's going to be at the bottom of the chair, and So the first thing what I like to do actually do my piping. Now this piping you can actually buy the whole bunch of it off of eBay or whatever. You can actually, instead of doing all this, they can all be pre-stitched piping and you just stitch them down to your material. I think they're not terribly expensive, but I just like doing this. Now you can stitch your piping, separate and then use that and then stitch your material, but it's kind of extra step. This works okay. You just have to be a little bit more patient. You just have to kind of slowly feed your material and then get your edges together. Now what I like to do, I like to use a staple. I'm just going to staple these edges a little bit so they don't right next to my cording, to my cord, and like so. Do one more time, and now it's going to hold my pipe. And again, this presser foot is specially designed. It's kind of hard to see it, but it has that indentation on it. You can actually set it right on top of your ridge now where your pipe is, and it really makes it so much easier. Without that, you cannot do this. So that was my struggle throughout the summer. Could not, for the machine that I used to have, I could not find those attachments, and that was a big problem. So and also, as I said, the other machine did not have enough of the clearance. It was very difficult. Now basically it's going to get even more difficult now. Right now I have 3 layers of material. Now we're going to add another side. It's going to get 4, so it really gets stacked up pretty well. Now this machine has no problems to sewing all that whatsoever, but it's you got to be kind of patient to get everything lined up. And press it down, and this just feeds itself. Now I'm a little bit actually off, more to the middle. I'm gonna lift it up and push it to the side just a little bit, and now perfectly I'm lined up. I'm gonna drop my needle down first, and now I don't have to worry about how this part of my material looks like, because this is going to be cut later on. This is where my headrest is going to be. They're going to be stitched to the side, and this I don't have to worry about it. I'll show you that later. Again, I don't want to be some kind of a YouTube guy who show how to do upholstery, but I did learn a little bit of it, so I can just show you guys how I do stuff now. I'm going to turn the machine on and slowly start. You want to actually hold your stitches, your suture, until it locks itself a couple of times so it doesn't get tangled up. So a couple of times. Now I can reverse it, but I don't really have to, because this is going to be cut up anyway later on. And so I'm just going to slowly start to this machine works beautifully. Now, one of the problems with this machine is when it's on setting number 7. It's like a 7 millimeter, I believe, the length of your stitch, and it works pretty good. When I also change that, it starts to give me some issues. So I cannot change it right away. I have to kind of stop and redo everything and then change the setting on it. I cannot just change it as I'm sewing. It doesn't feel right for some reason. Maybe it's just the design of the machine. But so anyhow, we're gonna finish this end, and then we're gonna go to another side, and then we're gonna get those big pieces measured and. Of course, you want to be careful. You want to get your finger stuck under the needle. It would be a bad day. This needle will have no problem going through your finger. Now, as you can see, now we're going to the part where we actually have this wider piece. Now we have to actually follow that with our material on the top. And now I'm gonna lift my presser foot. You can see I can actually, I'm gonna feed the bottom. I'm gonna move the bottom piece that actually gets it straight with the machine. Now I have a needle down. I'm not going to lose my alignment. I can actually lift up my presser foot. I can actually freely now move my material to get into the position I need to be. I'm going to actually do a couple more straight stitches until I get to this. There you go. Right now I'm actually at this curve. I'm going to drop my needle down, lift my presser foot up, and then I'm going to move my material down to actually get to my. And now here. Again, that's why in this kind of work you got to have a very, very slow machine. Speed is not an option here. Now I'm gonna go back again, get my bottom, and this is very nice because now I can use both of my hands to move my material, but I can actually use my knee to lift my presser foot. I couldn't do that before with other machine. Well. I'm going to reverse it a little bit, even though I don't have to. It's all going to be stapled anyway. So, okay, so that's that side, and then I'm going to finish the other one, and then we're going to go to scissors. And this is where you actually have to follow the contour of your piece. You can see now it's actually pretty decent, not too bad. Now, a couple of times it did kind of skip a couple of stitches here as well. I could see actually something like the needle, something hit, like I don't know what happened. You can see here it's kind of messed up, but again, it's not a big deal because we're going to have another piece stitched to this anyway, so they'll be okay. That is something else real quick. Now, as I said, I needed to be my stitch line to be at 5.5 centimeters, and now I can actually measure it right at the stitch line. Position the tool, and we're at 55 millimeters. So we're right on the money, and so I'm pretty pleased the way the measurements are fine. So this is going to be our, the top part of the chair. So I guess it looks pretty nice. The stitches are nice and tight, and it'll be good. Okay, this segment is done, so I'm pretty pleased the way it's going to look. You see it lays nice and the way it should. And now if everything is okay, so I measure everything, you should be kind of right in the middle of it, and it is. So this, of course, this other piece wraps around, and so I think so far so good. So I'm going to put this on the side. I'm done with that for now. And the next will be simply measuring the back of this piece here. Just going to measure it. And that's what I really like, because now everything is nice and tight. I can precisely know where my stitch line is supposed to be. Instead of taking everything apart, everything kind of gets, it's just difficult for me. I mean, again, everybody has different ways of doing it. I kind of found this to be a easy way. So I'm just going to measure here. I'm around 27 centimeters. And I'm sure the bottom is a little wider. Okay, so at the bottom we're at the 30, and here like 50. Of course, I'm going to have longer. I'm going to put a little bit more actually. I can go 70 centimeters because you're going to have some allowance. I'm sorry. You're going to have allowance, like our seam allowance on top as well. So I can go around 70 centimeters easy, and get a little bit more. The mistake I made last time, I did not have enough material at the bottom. I just barely enough to staple it, so I don't want to make that mistake again. You can see actually still water drips out of this chair, and everything was this boat was sitting outside uncovered for years, and anyhow it was a mess. And so I'm gonna measure this speed. I'm gonna cut it. On this one I really don't have to worry about which way it's gonna stretch. maybe I'm gonna cut the piece that doesn't, it can actually stretch top to bottom instead from side to side, so it doesn't get too carried on the sides, I guess. So, alright, I'm gonna measure this one and then we'll go from there. So I'm gonna mark my piece now, my back piece. I tested my material again to see which way it's gonna stretch, and I can see it's actually stretching this way, okay? Alright, let's see. You guys can see. Anyhow, it stretches this way, it doesn't stretch this way. So I want to have my piece, I want this to be top, and I want this to be bottom of my back piece, because I don't want this back piece to stretch from side to side, and it's going to mess up my stitch line. So I can always get under the chair and set the tension, but I don't want to get too much shifting on the back of my chair. So this will be perfect. I'm just going to measure my piece now, cut that up, and then we're going to do the sides. Okay, I finished marking my my back piece. As we know, I measured 27 at the top and 30 at the bottom, and I'm going to add 3 centimeters for my stitch allowance, my seam allowance, and that's going to give me 30 at the top and the 33 at the bottom. And all I did, actually, I marked the center. I marked my 33 at the bottom, and I found the center, and I draw the line all the way to the top, and then I split the it's like 15 here, 15 here, so I can actually have a symmetrical piece on both sides. And again, that's just how I do it, and I think it'll be fine. So I'm going to cut this up, and we're going to put it on the chair and make sure it's okay. Now to check yourself, you can simply just fold your piece in half, and these edges should match if you have done your measurements right. And you can see everything is fine. Again, I mean, this doesn't have to be precisely in a millimeter, but it should be okay. Now let's get the chair. This is the top, and we're pretty good. We have 1.5 centimeters on each side of seam allowance. You can see where's my edge here and here. I'm pretty good. And then bottom should be a 30. Yep, I'm good. Perfect. So there's plenty of seam allowance. I can finish it all the way, and so that's that piece. I'm going to put this to the side. Now the fun starts. Now we have to figure out how we're gonna get this marked and this side. So the back is done. Something else I didn't show, as I said before, I did pay attention which way my fabric is going to stretch, and I didn't want to stretch the laterally from side to side, because it can distort my stitch line here, and so you can see now it's not stretching from side to side. It's going to stretch top to bottom, which I don't really care. I can really set that tension with no problems at all. So I don't want this stitch line to get distorted by pulling. Once I sew everything together, and you start setting tension on it. Okay, so my next step will be to mark my side, and I have struggled a lot with this. It's very difficult. Well, I mean, of course, for me it is, because this is my second chair. So what I'm going to do now, I am using just a plastic, clear plastic. I got this from my work. This is just a bag that I opened it up, and now I'm going to put this chair to the side, and I'm going to lay this on top of it, like so, just to make sure. This is a small piece of plastic, so I have to just to make sure that it's going to cover all of the edges, and it does. Now, my first idea was to use a double-sided tape everything around, and I laid my piece of this plastic on top of it, and I said, you know what, it's just a waste of time. I can just use my staple, and I can just staple it down temporarily until I mark my size, because this is all going to be removed anyway. So I'm just going to take a staple, and I use this short staples, and I'm kind of angle it a little bit so it doesn't go all the way into the foam, so I can see, so I can actually take it out. And just gonna, oops. Okay, now I have to carry it away. This will be enough for me to be able to follow my stitch line, get my measurements. Now this will be perfect. So once I mark this side, I'm gonna just copy the other side, because it's gonna be the same. I mean, these chairs are pretty, you know, they're in pretty good shape. They are identical. I guess they would put them in a press, so both sides are the same. So no reason to go to another side, do the same. And I'm going to take these small scissors, and I'm just going to go and start marking my over here. And now I'm just going to simply follow my stitch line. Now, of course, again, once I make this template, I will have to add my seam allowance. Now this is not going to always work, because many times seats will be torn. You know, this one is intact, so I can do this. I guess sometimes it's going to be so distorted, and you might actually use some kind of tape just to temporarily tape it down, that you can actually follow your seam stitch line. Okay, so that's good. And yeah, this is not the correct way of doing it. I just did it because I kind of found it kind of easy for me to do this way. You know, what I say, there's a million ways to skin the cat, right? Okay, so that's that. And here, all right, that's good. And now the bottom side, you're just gonna leave enough to always. It's a good idea to leave a little bit more than you need. You can always trim that down once you staple it. That was, as I said, my first mistake on my first chair. I barely had enough to stitch everything together. Okay, that's close enough, I think. Yeah, that should be okay. But this, just to staple it down, it for me works so much easier. Instead of, I was going to use double-sided tape and all that. I said, why should I do that? I can just staple it, because all this is going to be removed. Okay. Alright, and now I have a piece that should work for me. See how much dirt is on this chair. Alright, this is junk. And Now we can simply just pull it off. Now I have what I need. This is my template for my side. And again, it's going to the other one's going to be the same on the other side. Just check here. Sure one. Just cut this. Alright. This edge, I'm just going to trim it. It'll be fine. Okay. So this should work. I got my template on my material. Again, I checked which way it's going to stretch. I don't want to stretch the side to side now. This still is going to stretch from top to bottom, and I taped it a little bit. So what I'm going to make me also, it's called sandbag. It's just a bag filled with sand, and what it does, you can make different shapes, so you can actually lay on top of your fabric so that it doesn't move as you work. And now I'm just going to simply trace the edges, and that's what's going to be my my seam line. And then I'm going to add 1.5 centimeters all the way around. But I don't have to add that to the bottom of it. It's going to be stapled down. And my actual left hand is kind of more precise when I do this. I mean, it's not, it's not rocket science. I mean, you want to be precise, but make a little mistake, it's not too bad, because you can always kind of work it out a little bit and make it fit. There. I need to get me a better marker. This one's kind of fat. It's very nice, kind of pencil style marker for this. But that's fine. This will work. Okay, now I traced it down, and I can move it away. You can see that this is where I had my tape. Just going to connect these two ends. Alright, that'll work. Again, this is going to be our stitch line, and now I'm just going to add seam allowance. I'm going to use my little tool. It's set at 15 millimeters, and I can just stab it. Well, I'm just going to put a little mark here, and I'm just going to connect these dots, and then we're gonna cut it and make it. Okay, I got my piece cut. You can see I marked my stitch lines here. And now I can actually use this piece for another side. I don't have to use that plastic piece anymore. I can just use this now. What you want to do now, you want to actually flip it. You can see this is the back side, and this is the back side as well. Now you want to flip it this way, so you can actually make it the left and right side. Simply now, I can, again, I'm still following the same pattern, the way that the material is stretched, and just going to trace it around, cut it, mark my stitch line, and then we can actually stitch the the back and the sides together and see how it looks like. Sorry guys, it's getting dark. Anyhow, now we have made left and right side, and that's what I said before. When you make one side, you have to flip your piece so that you can do opposite side. Now you can see we have two identical pieces, Now here's the face, and there's the face. Okay. Now we're gonna lay. This is the okay. So this is the one that we actually made our first template, and was the right hand side. You can see the staples to the inside of it, and I'm gonna put this piece over, and it looks very nice. I like it. The mesh is pretty good. You can see this will be fine. Okay, now let's. Now this is the piece that we made out of this side. And again, I didn't even bother to do the template on this side. I just copied on the right side, and here's how this one fits. It's actually pretty good. I'm pretty happy the way it fits. And now we can go ahead and I'm just going to stitch the back side tonight. I'm going to wrap it around just to see how everything looks, and then we can make tomorrow probably these two sides. And so what we can do now, this is where I was struggling a lot at the beginning, how to place my pieces together so they are placed in a correct direction, so to speak. So now I can, here's my back piece here, and now this is the top, this is the bottom, and I can simply take my side here. Again, if you're confused, what goes where, and take this side, and I can see what we're going to do now. We have to make sure, I did not mark my seam allowance on the top of this piece. I'm going to do that real quick. Sorry. Now, why do I need seam allowance on the top? Because I'm going to have the, of course, this piece is going to be stitched to the top, and that's why I need this part of the fabric, of the material, to be stitched to this. Of course, you'll see at the end we're actually going to cut part of it to put our headrest on it. And so now I know this is the way this is going to be, and I can even now, if I want to, I can line up my stitch line where it needs to be. So I can even staple it if I want to, but I'm not going to. But this is where the confusing part comes in. How you're gonna, you put this on the table. It's very confusing if you're, doing it the first time. So I'm gonna maybe do the trail like this. And so here's my line here, and I'm just going to take this piece, okay, I'm going to line it up with this end here, and this we're going to stitch together. But now how are we going to do that? Well, simply we're just going to flip it over like so, okay, this is going to do this, we're going to flip it, line up two ends, and then before you get to your table, just take a staple and staple a couple of places, so now you know for sure how to stitch it together so you don't make mistake. Here, and you can actually staple it all the way. That's going to keep you nice alignment if you like. That's fine too. You can see now I have to follow this curve with the edge of this back piece. So I have to feed this over. Sometimes what you can do, you can actually make little notches in a material. It's going to help you feed it over. This is actually not too bad. Some places when you get to here, it's a really tight space, especially here. It really gets crowded, so to speak. and gets a little difficult to make that turn. But like on these little bolsters, these are really hard. Not really, I mean, you know, for the first time. So what you have to do, you basically start from the middle. You stitch one side, and then you flip it and you stitch the other side. You cannot go so, because it's not going to be even. You have to mark the center of the back piece and the center of the top piece, and then you start from the center, stitch one side, and then flip your material and stitch another side. I really should start from the beginning, but I didn't know if any of you guys gonna be interested in it. I hope somebody's gonna find this entertaining, I guess. And anyhow, I'm gonna start stitching this. Then now I know for sure that I'm not gonna make a mistake. That I actually have this part. This is how it's gonna fit, right like that. But now I know that I'm not gonna. I have to go. I can go now to my sewing machine and get this done. Got my pieces laid the way they're supposed to be, and I will lock this stitch now. So I'm gonna simply drop my presser foot. What you can do also, you can drop your needle first, just to make sure you're on the line where you need to be. I'm gonna pull this little bit of a thread out, so I can actually drop the needle. I'm to know that I'm exactly on my stitch line. Again, I should use a little bit finer marker, but that's fine. It's not that big of a deal. Anyhow, so I'm gonna start. I'm gonna keep the tension on my suture and do a couple threads, couple lock stitches, and a couple stitches. I'm gonna reverse it so I can actually lock it. So this handle here is gonna reverse my stitch, and now I'm locked in. It's not going to come apart anymore. And I'm just going to follow my line and finish this side. And this is actually my top speed on the machine, and it's beautiful. It's working pretty good actually. I don't like the way it sounds. It's not pulling the. I got too much tension on the bottom, not enough on the top. That's okay, so now that's the problem. For some reason it worked great, and now all of a sudden it lost the, I can tell right away by the sound it's not the way it's supposed to be. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. You can see right here, the top, it's kind of flat. The stitches, I'm not sure it's lighting good. But see the bottom is actually, you can see how the thread is actually going in. Basically it's pulling my knot all the way out. So now I have to take a couple scrap pieces and probably lose the tension a little bit, because now my top tension is too, let's see, the bottom tension is actually, what it is, let me see. Yeah, the top tension is too much because it's pulling through the material all the way out, and that's not good. Just a couple. It's always good to have some, scrap pieces, of course. And just gonna, yeah, this machine is great, but sometimes it just has kind of mind on its own. I'm actually not moving. Oh, look at that. Okay, well, that's crazy. my light was sitting on top of my thread. That's crazy. That's why I said had too much tension on the top. Well, another thing to kind of pay attention to is laying right on top of my thread is really pulling hard on the top, and that's why I was pulling all this. Oh, that's crazy. All right, and I could tell right away that something's all right. I mean, it's not sound the way it's supposed to. It doesn't sound the way it's supposed to. So I'm just gonna stitch over. It's not a big deal. Yeah. Okay, let's try now. All right, so that's now I freed everything. You have to kind of look to make sure that the thread is thread through all these little loops and stuff. And okay. That's what I like to hear. That's much better. Okay, yeah, it's working fine now. That's how I learned how to troubleshoot. When you look at the stitch, you have to figure out where is your tension. Is it too much at the bottom, not enough on the top, whatever. So there's things you can do to kind of check it and okay, so I have to stop now. I actually went a little bit too far. Now I have to feed my, I had these two ends have to meet now. And I already have a little bit too far, but that's not too bad. So I just have to now push the top over to the bottom side. I'm gonna stop and do it again. And so kind of have to keep my stitch on my line. Again. Okay, well, I'm going to lock it now, and that should be that side, hopefully. Alright, see now it's much nicer thread on both sides here, and it's kind of hard to see it, but I hope you guys are able to see it. In the beginning I was just pulling way too hard on the top because that light wasn't laying on top of our stitch, and here's what it looks like now, and you can actually kind of see it. Okay, it looks very nice. I think it'll be good. Okay, well, I'm going to get the other side down and we kind of wrap it around and see how everything fits.